start now. So today, as first webinar for the Mobilize Your City Global Forum, the webinar where we will learn how to use the Mobilize Your City Emission Calculator. This webinar is organized by the Mobilize Your City Partnership in collaboration with IFOI, that is the Institute for Energy and Environmental Research based in Germany. So this session will introduce the Mobilize Your City Emission Calculator developed by IFOI, and it will provide all the resources to the participants that need to start using this kind of tool in their own city or country. So emission calculator in general and the emission calculator from Mobilize Your City are valuable tools to help cities and countries in their planning process for sustainable urban mobility. So in this session aims at introducing the emission calculator. We will discover the calculator and its uses. We will learn how to start using the tool, and we will identify the existing and available resources to start using the calculator. So today, for this webinar, we will be four to present and moderate the session. We will have Miss Anh Minh Ngo, who is lecturer at the University of Transport and Communication in Hanoi, Vietnam. She's also, and of course, a transport expert and consultant for the GIZ, and she will provide a large presentation. Later on, I don't see her yet, but Marie Colson, who is a project leader at the IFOI, will join us. She is also one of the key experts. She participated to the development of the emission calculator that we are presenting today. This session will be also facilitated by Patricia Mariano, who is a technical and project advisor at the GIZ Philippines, and myself. So I'm Clément Musil. I'm the the program manager for Mobilize Your City in Asia. So this session of the day is organized as follows. First, we will introduce briefly what is Mobilize Your City, the partnership. Then I will provide you a first and very general introduction of the emission calculator. After, Ms. Ngo will share with us a presentation about a study case that is finally not a real study case, because we are speaking about 5 different cities in Vietnam that are going to use the emission calculator. And so Ngo will also provide a more technical demonstration about the first step to use the emission calculator. Finally, at the end of this session, we will have a discussion, a Q&A session, facilitated by Patricia and Marie Colson. So, just to be sure and to be clear in my message, this webinar is an introduction to the emission calculator that aims at providing the resources to the participant in need to start to use this kind of tool. So, however, before to start the real presentation, I would like to know a little bit more about the audience. It is important for us, as you know, Mobilize Your City is also welcoming city partners, country partners, but also open like this kind of webinar to other audience. So we will proceed to a little poll, and Patricia, maybe we can launch the poll.
Yes, sure. Thanks, Clément. So hi everyone. Good afternoon. You will see in the chat I posted a link to menti.com. So if you could follow that for our poll. I will also share my screen. And here in the screen, you should also see the code that you can enter on Menti. So that's www.menti.com, and just use the code 31660406. Right? And then, okay, I'm assuming people are already there. So let's just start with the first question. Right. So we have quite a mix of people in these events typically, and we would like to know what type of organization are you with or you're representing. So just click your organization. I think we have about 20 people in the chat, so we're going to wait for a few more people. Okay, so a lot from international, some local government, some consultants. Other quite a few from other as well in comparison to the others. So if you would like to type from in the chat what type of organization you are from, please do so we can recognize you better. Okay, I think we now have a better idea of who's in the group. Let's move on to the next question. Okay, today we will be looking at an emissions calculator, the Mobilize Your City Emissions Calculator. So before we do that, what's your experience with calculating emissions? Okay, sure. Okay, great. We have a lot of people who have not done it, but you're here. We're assuming that means you really want to learn, and we hope that the session today will be helpful for you. Great. Okay. Yeah. So a lot of people will really be learning from Miss Ngok and Marie today. It's great. And then moving on to our last question, right? And here you can select multiple answers, of course. We just want to know, why are you interested in calculating emissions? Very interesting, especially since most of us in the group have not yet done this before. So do you want to understand the status quo in your project? Do you want to make scenarios to help with decision making? Do you want to get access to climate finance? Are we doing this because emissions calculations is something that we have to do as requested by somebody else? Okay. Also seeing others here. Again, for this one, if there's any other reason that you want to share, please feel free to type it in the chat. Again, to help us understand the group better as well. Okay, and I'm maybe waiting for a couple more people, but I think it's very clear. Generally, the group today, we want to make scenarios to help in our decision making, right? Right. Okay, that was our last question for the day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Clement.
So, I'm sorry. Very sorry. I'm in. So very sorry for this little minute of technical issues from my side. So to launch this webinar, I just want to introduce briefly what is the Mobilize Your City partnership. So Mobilize Your City is a mobility partnership that was launched after the COP21 organized in Paris in 2015. It means this partnership has its roots in the climate negotiation and climate commitments. Mobilize Your City partnership is supporting local and national government in developing countries in creative, more inclusive, livable, economically competitive and climate resilient cities. It does so by providing support to the development and implementation of sustainable urban mobility plans, the so-called the SUMP, for the individual cities, as well as national urban mobility plans, the NUMP. So the SUMP and the NUMP are the two main instruments that are promoted by the partnership. By implementing such plans, Mobilize Your City members, cities and countries are targeting to achieve 50% reduction in urban transport-related gas emission by 2050 compared to a scenario as business as usual. So the objective of the partnership is to work at least with 100 cities and 20 countries to accelerate the transition to sustainable urban mobility. So how is the partnership is organized? You have different kind of partners, as for instance, the contributing partners as the European Commission, the German and French ministries of environment that are financing the partnership and the action. After that, you have implementation partners, that's the AFD, the GIZ, the ADB also, that are supporting the elaboration and implementation of the SUMP or the NUMP. The knowledge partners of the network are those who are supporting the implementing partners with their expertise in the action. So today the partnership has 78 members, that, and among them 63 cities and 15 countries. This partnership is working around 4 service areas. I will not develop all that, but among them you have the mobility planning that is supporting the development and the elaboration and implementation of SUMP and NUMP. Capacity building is the exercise that we are doing today by promoting the use of the emission calculator. So in total, it is in this partnership, it is 31 cities and 9 countries that benefit directly from a technical assistance from the partnership. So you can see this partnership is worldwide. We are working in Latin America, in Africa, and in Asia, as well in Eastern Europe. Regarding really Asia, what is happening for the moment, the partners joined the partnership the last 4 or 5 years, and the activities are mostly led by the AFD, the GIZ, and the ADB. So the conducted activities in the region are NUMP. So, for example, the NUMP in the Philippines, in Thailand, that are supported by the GIZ under the transfer project, or also in India with the AFD, with the support of the European Union. And we have SUMP, so it means technical assistance really directly to the city. We have the SUMP elaboration that is currently ongoing in Indonesia with the Medan metropolitan area, in the Kugunegala in Sri Lanka, and also some activities about SUMP will start soon, and especially in Pakistan with the city of Peshawar, Mindora, and Abbottabad. Other members are also conducting studies to improve the existing mobility plan, or doing complementary studies. For instance, an e-bus transition plan in Nagpur in India. I just want to make a little pause here just to tell you that for Mobilize Your City Asia, we recently launched a LinkedIn group. So this LinkedIn group aims at gathering all the different stakeholders in the region, and to share knowledge and to share news about the different projects that are ongoing. So as you are now part of this webinar, if you want to join our LinkedIn group to exchange, we will be happy for that. So directly, now we come directly to this introduction to this emission calculator. So in order to support countries and cities, part of the partnership in estimating gas emission, an Excel supported tool was developed and launched last year, 2020. It is the MobiliseYourCity Emissions Calculator. So this tool allows to calculate road and rail transport GHG emission. It enables calculating transport GHG inventories, business as usual, and scenario as well, climate scenario. So I organized this very brief introduction as follows. I will come back on the benefit, why is it important to measure gas emission, the emission calculator in itself, and the first feedback from the use of this calculator. So regarding the benefit of measuring GHG emission. So as you know, transport and urban transport is a significant source of gas emission and also increasing source of emission, especially with the increasing of the use of the motorized vehicle that participate to briefly around 80% of the gas emission in a city. So Mobilize Your City members, with the declaration that they have signed, are committing themselves to participate to the reduction of around 50% of the GHG emission by 2050. In order to transform transport and urban transport, there is a need to measure gas emission. In order to adapt measures, policies, there is a need to know what is the present situation, to understand the activity of transport. What is the level of emission in a city, in a country? What is the status quo? Also, what can happen in the future? What can be the action that can be taken? So, what can be the future if nothing is done? That is the BAU scenario, the business as usual. What can be the situation if there is like some application of policies? So the emission calculator can give some ideas of the future of the emission in a city, in a country. So why I'm insisting a little bit in about the city level, it is because most of the city that are engaged in the SUMP elaboration, they will do in the SUMP methodology and in the SUMP progress emission inventory in order to understand transportation activity and the current emission. They will understand the impact of doing nothing. If nothing is happening in the city, what will be the result in the few years? They will be able also into the SUMP to build scenarios. So in order to modeling the impact that can have the different policies and measure. So this is why it's important to measure the gas emission. It's also important in order, after when a SUMP is adopted, to monitor the progress of the measure that have been taken. So finally, measuring gas emission can also help to access to finance. So as you know, today, international development banks and agencies are engaged to finance climate-friendly projects. So measuring emission is one of the key rationale for financing institutions to accept a proposal. So the emission calculator aims at helping developing countries and cities to calculate transport gas emission for a reference year and a business as usual scenario, as well as climate scenario with emission reduction from mitigation measure, the so-called climate scenario. As a result, the tool provides data on the calculated transport demand, energy consumption, and gas emission. About the tool in itself, so the first goal of the tool is to calculate road and rail transport gas emission for a city, for a country. It allows to model three situations: the inventory of the current situation, the business as usual up to 2050 if nothing is done in a city or in a country, and also GHG emission reduction for a SUMP or NUMP. So it means the climate scenarios for passenger and freight as well. So it's important to know that this emission calculator is compatible with the IPCC inventory guidelines, but it's not completed. What does it mean? It means that the tool only covers gas emission, so the GHG emission, and exclude the pollutants. The biofuels are not included, and not all the emission required by the IPCC guidelines for road and rail are assessed. Well, what we have to know also, what is important, and we will discuss a little bit further about that, the data gathering is a very crucial part of the using this tool, but also it's very the most time-consuming part. If the data is available and easy to collect, basically you need only 2 to 3 days to generate the different models. So what is also important to know is to quantify and monitor the impact of package mitigation action. So the emission calculator will not calculate or provide you a result about individual action. It is the result of the package of the mitigation actions. And one more important aspect of this tool, it will provide key performance indicators that will allow you to monitor and progress the implementation and the implementation of the different measures as a general aspect from the passenger and the freight aspect as well. So in terms of methodology, this calculator is based on 3 fundamental aspects. The first one is a territorial approach. In order to provide inventory and scenario, a territorial frame should be settled. In the practice, we see that the metropolitan frame is chosen. So it means it's not only one urban core, but it's also the municipality around the main urban core. That means often beyond the administrative limit of the city. So once the territorial frame is defined, all traffic must be taken into account. Traffic of inhabitants, commuters that are going in and out, and visitors as well. So the second important approach for the methodology is the bottom-up approach. What is that? It means that the calculations are based on distance travel. It's based basically on the real transport activity data. So, and this bottom-up approach is the opposite or different from the top-down approach that is based on fuel energy consumption. So it's another way to do the calculation. Last aspect is the ASI aspect, that the avoid shift improve fuel approach. So it means it's something that it's the basic also for the evolution of the transport and the mobility. So the avoid what it's to find solution in order to reduce travel or to the need to travel, the shift to a more energy efficient mode, and improve what the efficiency, for instance, for the vehicle technology. So this is those 3 aspects that are beyond the foundation for this calculation emission tool. So in terms of data, this calculator will need socioeconomic data about the population, the gross domestic, the GDP, and of course, you will need to have data about transport demand, the vehicle kilometer traveled, and also the fleet approach and the fleet. So it means that for the one who will use this kind of calculator, data about transport demand is of course one important aspect. But about all that, about all the data and all that, I will refer to the tutorial that was and were prepared by the EFOI, and especially the user manual that is explaining what are the requirements for the data. However, data is time consuming. So after entering the data, the emission calculator is able to provide you three situations: the inventory situation, the business as usual situation, and the climate scenario situation. So for all those situations, you will have the inputs. These are the data that you need to provide yourself, and you will see it's different kind of data. And also you will have the different outputs, such as transport performance, person or ton kilometer, modal split, GHG emission. And also we will have that for a different range of year. This calculator also is providing you graphics to visualize the different scenario, but we will see that in the next presentation with Ms. No. So now we can see that, as I just said in my brief introduction, this emission calculator was developed last year in 2020, so it's like quite fresh and new. However, we have now some cities and countries that starts to use it. So we will see that with Ms. Nop that this emission calculator will be used in different cities in Vietnam. This emission calculator is currently used in Medan in order to prepare the sump, and the sump is Medan now is in the phase to elaborate the different scenarios. So they will use this calculator to provide to model the different scenarios. Cities like in Pakistan, like the Peshawar, Mingora, and Ahmedabad, will also use this emission calculator, as they will start soon the elaboration of their sump. So some Asian cities are using this tool, but also we have some cities in and especially in Latin America, and we have the case of Antofagasta in Chile that is using and use the tool to elaborate his sump. So I will just briefly make reference to the case of Antofagasta in Chile. So it's a city in the north of Chile. They started the elaboration of the sump in 2019 with the support of the GIZ and under the Euroclimat Plus program. So in the sump phase of the city, they use the emission calculator and did the inventory in 2020. And so with the inventory, they managed to find out that the total emission of the transport sector for the city is over 800 million tons of CO2. In addition to this inventory, they also generate a first business as usual scenario. So this business as usual scenario also include as we can see on the graph on the right, include a reduction of the gas emission to 2050. Why? It's because they already took some measure like the electrification of the public transport. So the BAU is quite interesting for them. However, as they developed their sump and the different scenario, we can see on the graph on the right that the scenario provide ideas of the reduction of the gas emissions. So the different scenario have of course different components. So the scenario 1, the E1, mainly focused on the improvement of the infrastructure for public transport, and so it reduce approximately the emission of 20% by 2050. The scenario 2 is complementary to the scenario 1, but with financial and institutional measure, and they managed with this plan, they can get or decrease of 45% the emission of the gas emission by 2050. And the last scenario, that is combining the scenario 1 and scenario 2, but in addition with land use measure to reduce the emission, we will have, in comparison with the BAU, 55% reduction by year 2050. So based on the result, the technical board of the Antofagasta city that is following the sump, they pick the scenario 3, the number 3, that fit with their goal and their objective. So as a feedback from this city, we can say that gathering all the data was somehow very difficult, mainly because the information exists, but the information exists in different institutions, so it was difficult to gather the required data. There was a real satisfaction from the city and the staff to implement this situation at the city level, because normally this kind of simulation is done by the central government. So what I can say now, if you want to find different material to know more about the emission calculator, you can go to visit the website of the Mobilize Your City and the knowledge platform. You will have access to the tool, that is the one Excel file. You will have access to the methodology. You will have access to the tutorial, also video tutorial that were done by IFOI. So it's quite comprehensive, and it's very interesting to follow that. Just to conclude this quick presentation, so what are the benefits of using this kind of emission calculator? First of all, this tool is free, totally accessible. You can get access. It really require a minimum of expertise, and expertise why? It's in order to prepare the data. However, there is a quick learning as the resources are available, and also you can use this tool very early in the preparation of a project, of a sub, for example, and you can add on the way the different data that you manage to collect. So I will stop with my presentation here. I can see in the discussion box that there is already some question. However, we will wait the last part of this webinar, because it will be a free discussion with everyone, and also with our expert, Marie Colson, in order to discuss this tool and how to use this tool. So now I will give the floor to Mo. So Mo is lecturer at the University of Transport and Communication in Hanoi, but she's also consultant for the GIZ, and she's performing a project with the GIZ and for the GIZ that is using the emission calculation tool for cities in Vietnam. So, Ngo, give you the floor, and please go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, Clement, to give me a chance to introduce about our project in Vietnam and the benefit we get by application of MobiliseYourCity Emissions Calculator. Good morning from my side, everyone. My name is Ngọc from University of Transport and Communications, Vietnam. I'm also an individual consultant of GIZ and have a chance to participate the project support to Vietnam for the implementation of the Paris Agreement, CIPA. Everyone can see my presentation, right? Okay, great. So our project is support to Vietnam for the implementation of the Paris Agreement, CIPA. Actually, CIPA is the cooperation project between Vietnamese and German government focusing on mitigation, adaptation, and emerging issues on loss and damage. The project proposal has been developed based on the intensive discussion between Montreal and GIZ, as well as in close consultation with related line, ministry, and province, including Ministry of Transport, MOT, Ministry of Planning and Investment, MPI, Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, MARD, and two provinces, Hà Tĩnh and Quảng Bình, from 2017 to 2019. The project provides support to Vietnamese government in establishing the framework condition to implement the NDC and the Paris Agreement. Under VNCPA project, GIZ support MOT on the sub-project, the development of regulatory documents and technical guidelines in transport sector. The main activities will mainstream NDC of Paris Agreement into the action plan in response to climate change of the transportation sector, and support doing research and deployment legal documents on management of GHG emission from aircraft in civil aviation transportation. So with the aim of enhancing transport sector commitment, Ministry of Transport requested GIZ to support action plan development response to climate change in the period 2021 to 2030 under the transport activity proposed in NDC to reduce GHG emission. Passenger motorship from private to public transport sector is considered as one of main key. Based on the research of GIZ and the World Bank in the project Pathway to Low Carbon, this solution can distribute to reduce 7.5 million CO2 emissions. However, that report cannot show potential GHG emission reduction per city. Moreover, Ministry of Transport wants to implement commitments strongly in NDC implementation in Vietnam. Therefore, the aim of our assignment is to estimate GHG emission of passenger motorship from private public transportation in 5 biggest cities oriented to cities' commitment. We need to identify feasible target for passenger motorship from private to public transportation in the big cities measures, focusing on 5 main cities: Hanoi, Hải Phòng, Đà Nẵng, Ho Chi Minh City, and Cần Thơ. This task will provide policy makers the comprehensive information on potential GHG emission reduction of passenger motorship from private to public transportation in this city. So before going to detail, I'd like to emphasize the environmental issues. In 2014, GHG emission of the road transport sector were 26.4 million CO2 and are projected to 72 million CO2 by 2030. Clement, is it okay? Everything can see me well? Okay. As I said, the CO2 emission projected to 72 million CO2 by 2030, nearly triple. And in the other side, about 1.5 million people in Vietnam get lung disease every year because of pollution. To respond to this context, policy or investment could provide sustainable transport solutions and lead to a reduction in GHG emission. One part of our assignment is assessing the mitigation impact of the list policy measure. We assume the demand for transport will continue to increase, driven by economic growth, population growth, and improved living standards. The BAU scenario assumes there will not be deployment of new policies and measures targeted at reducing emissions in the transport sector after 2014. In the mitigation scenario, we consider modest level of ambition corresponding to the implementation of measures defined in cities' transport development plan that can be implemented with support from local and international resources. For example, in Hanoi, we thought that the city planned to operate 3 metro lines by 2025 and up to 4 or 5 metro lines by 2030. Similarly, Ho Chi Minh City planned to operate 2 metro lines by 2025 and 3 metro lines by 2030. And in addition, some cities have a plan to establish BRT lines. In our project, we apply MobiliseYourCity Emissions Calculator, so-called MIC, to give an overview of the relevance of each transport mode regarding the total GHG emission. We found that MIC tool supports a bottom-up spreadsheet model to calculate transport demand, energy consumption, and GHG emission. It enables calculate GHG inventories of cities and countries, as well as BAU scenario and mitigation scenario. The tool also enables government to calculate potential effects of national and urban transport policies on total GHG emission. For example, the tool enables us to calculate the impact of measure bundle, like extension of public transport, the subsidy for electric vehicles on the total GHG emission. And within MIC tool, effects of mitigation action can be accessed. For example, here you can see the result of the BAU scenario and the mitigation scenario in terms of total VKT and the GHG emission in a specific city, Ho Chi Minh City. With support from MIC tool, we quickly learned that a shift from private to public transport go with energy efficiency will have to reduce GHG emission by nearly 15% by 2025 and even 25% by 2030. So we apply MIC tool to calculate GHG emission in 5 cities, and here are some preliminary results of the BAU scenario. Without any targeted policies and measures to reduce GHG emission in the passenger transport sector, the current composition of the energy source is estimated to remain largely unchanged, with heavy reliance on private vehicles, and emissions in 5 cities are projected to increase at an average of 3% per year, reaching nearly 21 million tons of CO2 emission in 2030. So, under the detailed level of ambition for each defined mitigation measure, based on the review of existing transport plans and in extensive consultation with relevant stakeholders, MIC tools support us to calculate the total CO2 emission from the passenger transport sector and break down by relevant transport mode. The investment of policy toward modal shift from private to public transport would result in the emission reduction from 21 million tons to 14 million tons in 2030. So aggregating the impact of all measures, we found that CO2 emissions started to decline from 2021 as a result of efforts to improve public transport and energy efficiency. Looking ahead, CO2 emissions are projected to reduce by 16% in 2025 and 28% by 2030 in the comparison of BAU in 5 cities. That's the result we got from application of MIC tool. Of course, I have some experience while using the MobiliseYourCity Emission Calculator. However, I think it's better to get the card after I move to the technical section. Okay, Clement.
Yeah, thank you. No, it was clear. It's very interesting. But yeah, that is the project and finally the result that you manage to provide. But the question here in this webinar is how to use the tool. So to learn to input the first data to calculate gas emission on the baseline scenario. So can you share that with us? Can you show us how to do?
Yes, of course. Can you, everyone can see the Excel file? Okay, great. Thank you, Clement. So now I would like to invite you to go to the technical presentation. This is the form of MobiliseYourCity Emission Calculator. And as you can see, the MobiliseYourCity Emission Calculator contains several sheets here which serve different purposes. Sheet Get Started, Sheet 1A, Sheet 2A, Sheet 2B are the main sheets to be filled in by user. Now let me introduce to you the step-by-step, the way to use this tool. We will start with the sheet Get Started. Okay. This sheet contains the defined color code which guide user to indicate in which cell input is required and which cell calculated automatically. Cell and sheet which are indicate green so that data input from the user is required. Dark gray cells are disabled one where no input is required, and this can change according to the input. Light gray cell provide further information and show the result of calculation and should not be changed. The last one is national default value. In case you do not have the data, the tool will use the default value for estimation. Now I start with the beginning. In the green mark cell on the left-hand side, you see that two levels. Maybe every pupil can see it clearly. Clement? Okay, great.
It's okay. It's a little bit small, but I have also a small screen, but it's a detail, so that we can see.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. In the green mark cell on the left hand side, there's two levels, country or city. If you work with country level, you should choose country. However, our project focused on the city, so I choose city in this cell. Then we need to apply the name of city. Here I put the Ho Chi Minh City to calculate the GHG emission in Ho Chi Minh City. And next, you have to choose the reference year and the language. In our project, I started with 2014, and there are three levels of language: English, French, and Spanish. And I choose English. And that's the very basic information in Get Started. Now I invite you to go through the key sheet. 1A, input base and BAU. As you can see right now here, after I fill in the data of name of city and reference year, the name of city and the reference year indicate here. And this sheet provides input data of transport activity in city or country to calculate GHG emission for a specific reference year and for a BAU scenario. Firstly, we will work with the socio-economic data. To calculate the inventory, you only choose to put data in the green marked cell of the reference year. In this case, the sheet 2A and 2B are not necessary. However, if you calculate the BAU scenario and mitigation scenario, you need to fill in the data not only in the left-hand side, but also in the right-hand side. In our case, I enter the data on green cell of population and GDP, for example. Then I move to the right hand to fill in the data of the annual growth rate for both population and GDP. Now you can see the in the light gray cell automatic display the value, and you also the result is a dynamic of population and GDP from the reference year until 2050. Okay, now I scroll down to the section of VKT. There are two approaches to input data of VKT. The first approach is indicated in the left-hand side. Here, I put the total mileage per vehicle category into green cell in the column C. Here. Or you can choose to input data in column D and E. For example, I don't want to put the total VKT per non-motorized transport. I delete and I choose here. These are the total number of vehicles in use and the average annual mileage per vehicle. Two approaches give you the same result, like 1,723 million VKT. However, because our approach choose the VKT approach, so I input the data here. In our estimation, we choose the first approach. And to calculate BAU, I continue to fill in data for annual growth rate for the total VKT for the specific time period on the right-hand side. Here, this is the data in the green cell. As you can see, I fill in all information. And after filling all information, you can see the result automatically estimated in the form of table, or you can see the result in the form of bar graph. Here, you can see the form of bar graph, dynamic of VKT. So we continue to step down. There is the information of VKT breakdown. In the next step, we need to fill in data of load, occupancy, and average trip length on the green cell like this. As soon as you get this data from surveys or from other reference sources, you are easy to fill in this data. And continue to step down. There is information of VKT breakdown by fuel type like gasoline, diesel, CNG, electric, and so on. This data can be obtained from Transport Authority. And for example, in case of passenger car, the tool separate into passenger car using gasoline and the mode share of gasoline, private car in using gasoline mode share. And please make sure during input the data, the sum of the VKT share within a vehicle type is 100%. On the next step, we need to enter the data of average energy or the fuel consumption for each vehicle type in green cell for reference year and the energy efficiency change in the BAU scenario in the right-hand side. And in our estimation, we assume that without any investment or policy, the energy efficiency is no change compared to BAU scenario. So I put 0 here. And the last step, we enter data of CO2 content of electricity production for the reference years and the future year. The purpose of this is to address the well-to-well CO2 emission from electric vehicle for both road and rail. That's all the data we need to fill base and BAU. And after we fill in all the data, we can see the appearance of result and in the term of total GHG emission. Here. Yeah, we can see the result of emission transportation for passenger transport and the total VKT for passenger transport. We already finished to enter data of base and BAU, and we can here see the result immediately. Now, I invite you to the sheet 2A input scenario passenger. Here is a subsection. It shows you is the name of mitigation regarding passenger transport, and Ho Chi Minh City is the city selected and reference years 2014. In the upper area of the sheet, if I delete all the data here, if we do not put any data, the result of the BAU scenario and the mitigation scenario should be the same, 0% reduction. But by entering By entering input on emission reduction measure, the impact of VKT and GHG emission can directly change, as you can see in the graph. Now I invite you to see the format of input data. There are two possible data input approaches for transport demand in this sheet. Which one the user should apply depends on the data available. If the future transport demand data for both the total mileage and the transport performance can be obtained from a transport model, this data can directly be input in the table in the box with upstream calculation like we did it already. But if no transport model is available, the user can address the transport demand in a step-by-step approach in the section without upstream calculation, following the avoid, shift, and improvement approach. Here, improvement approach. In our estimation, we choose the first approach with transport upstream tool. It means we collect the data from the policy, from city transport demand, the city transport plan, and build the travel demand forecast. And then we have the data to input on this green cell. After we finish this data, we continue move to section 3, improve. Yeah. In the section improve, the mitigation scenario calculated transport demand of each vehicle type can be split into different fuel types. This is the data you already input in the sheet 1A input base and BAU, so it becomes the light gray cell, and our task is input the data on the right hand side. If there is any change of the fuel type, we put if we have any change of fuel type, we will put here. For example, in 2025, we consult the transport authority, and they confirm that the private car use gasoline reduced from 90% to 87%. So in the mitigation scenario, we put the 87% for private car using the gasoline in this type. So in the last step, the average fuel energy consumption for climate change can be input, and in the calculation, the consumption value from BAU scenario are shown for make comparison. This input is necessary to calculate GHG emission. If one or several type of fuel is not in use, we can put 0 or nothing. And because our project finished with sheet 2A input climate scenario passenger, we thus consider the impact of policy or investment in transport. If you work with measure in freight transport, please go to sheet 2B and the same procedure are applied. And finally, we go to the sheet over a result. The sheet provides the GHG inventory, see here, and the result from the BAU scenario and climate scenario, both for passenger and freight transport. Here you can see the result BAU and the result of mitigation scenario, and it indicates to the bar graph to make it very easy to make comparison. And because our project do not work with freight transport, so you can see the freight transport is zero, no display here. And of course, I just introduce you the way to input data for the MobiliseYourCity Emission Calculator. And after working with this tool, I have some experience. The first impressive, the tool is very friendly with user. And after we input the data, the results are displayed as a tabular and bar graph, make it easy for user to review results. However, in addition to the advantage of tool, we also uh, found some barrier, especially in the database. In the context of the Vietnamese city, the data are often not available as required to fit the emission calculator. So the user need to adapt by using an external database to calculate input data. And the second is the tool does not provide the impact of each individual mitigation action. So that's all my experience to learn about Mobilize Your City Emission Calculator. Clement.
Yeah. Thank you
Yes.
very much, for your presentation. Thank you very much for explaining us, how to start to use this tool, because it is important. Often, you go to the website, you download the tool, you start, you don't know really, and it is like a really live explanation, and it's very, very useful. So thank you very much, for this explanation.
Explanation is useful for audience. Thank you very much.
Yeah. It is also that Mobilize Your City as a partnership. It is also to share this kind of knowledge, who is doing what, and how can we learn from the other how to do, because it is also like that we will manage to use the right tools for the right policies next time. Now I think we have time, and it's good, it's great to go in discussion with Patricia. Can you stop to share your screen, no?
Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you very much. So now it's time to discuss. We have time for that, and we have the right people for that as well, because we have Patricia first, but also we have Marie Colson, who participate to the development of this tool with the eFoil. So I saw in the discussion box that there was like some question that came already. So we can start with the question that we had, and after I will invite, Patricia will invite everyone for the discussion. So Patricia.
Thanks, Ramon. Hi again, everyone. So we just heard a lot about Mobilize Your City and the emissions calculator from Clement and from Ms. Ngok. And so I think there were already several questions in the chat. And Marie is here to help us answer a lot of them since they are quite technical in nature. I think we can tackle them from the order that they were submitted in, right? So just going up, we have a question from Tuong. And Tuong would like to know, can we apply the MYC emissions calculator to estimate the volume of CO2 reduction for a public bike sharing scheme? So the example is that if the public bike sharing scheme reaches about 500 trips a day with an average distance of 1.5 kilometers per trip, do we have a formula or methodology to calculate for that number? Yeah, Marie, if you could.
Yeah, I can.
Thank
Hi,
you.
everyone. Happy to be there with you from Germany. Marie Carson, and I am one of the main developer of the tool for our institute EFOI, which is an environmental research institute in Germany. So the question on the measure on bike sharing. Yes and no. Just for you to know, the tool has been developed in order to calculate scenarios, so aggregated measures at the macro level, which is the level of the city, or even level of the country, so can be used by the two levels. So it is not designed for it, so that it's not the easiest way to calculate it, but you can. You just have to input the data in the right position, which is not so friendly as if you have an entire scenario, because then you have to think about where you have to put your data, because you will not input all the data. So you will not do any inventory, for example. So that goes straightforward. So you can do it, but you may need a bit of technical help to be sure that you input the data in the right position, because the tool was not developed to assess all the possible measures that can go from new design of the city to bike sharing to new MRT lines to whatever it exists in the world. So it's possible, but maybe it will need a bit of technical help.
Thank you, Marie. And maybe I think this is also something that will come up. If they do need technical help with the calculator, how can they get it? Who should they approach for any assistance on that?
Yeah, I guess so. Normally there is a lot of resources online, but of course it's a tool, and tool is always a bit difficult at the first step. So on that, I would advise to contact the MYC Secretariat. So Clément is part of it in Asia, but there are all the colleagues of Clément working from Brussels. And in any case, to contact them, and I'm sure there is a way to find assistance on that. If I have to jump in for some days or whatever, there is always a solution to find assistance.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have also another question. What's the frequency for updating the emission calculator? Is there any recommended frequency for that?
It depends on the purpose. I would say a classical thing is to do it once a year, because you have the reporting, at least for the countries, so that is a kind of regular work you have to do. If there is no compulsory work, let's say, and you just do it like to have an opinion on, or an idea, how does it look like actually for the transport sector, and you have one big measure, like you want to develop a BRT system, and it takes some years to implement and so on. So if you need for this kind of measure the tool, I would say you can extend a bit the time, so to 2 or 3 years if you don't need it very regularly. But let's say on a classical basis, what we do in Germany is updating the tool each year. So, and not this one, but an equivalent to it.
Thank you, Marie. And maybe Ms. Mock, would you also have inputs on how frequent it should be calculated from your experience? How frequently it should be
Actually,
updated?
of course, during working with MIC tool, there's a lot of issue raising. And of course, I got support from Maria and Clement to deal with that problem. However, with my experience, for example, with the question from audience, uh, we we can calculate the model sheet from outside, from the external, and then after we calculate the final result from the model or from the external estimation, we can use that data to become the input for the MIC tool. That's the way we do at the current now.
Thank you for that. Okay, there was also a follow-up question from Miss, sorry, Miss or Mr. I'm so sorry. From Nimisha. Is there any institutional setup recommended for cities to ease and regularize the data collection? Maybe this is a question for everyone. Based on your experience, is there anything, maybe setting up an office, setting up a regular framework? Have you done anything like this?
I guess not. You could start. You're probably nearer to the question. I can say something, but I think you're the nearest to the
Right. Yeah. Well, actually, for the Philippines, we're preparing a data collection toolkit, just really focused on collecting transport data first, not so much on calculating the emissions, because we do have tools like this MYC emissions calculator to do that for. So what we are also trying to do here locally is to set up the institutional arrangements needed to regularize data collection. And how we're doing it is we're still learning. We've had a lot of conversations on the national level, and we've also started reaching out to cities. And as for how we can encourage government agencies to collect the data regularly, we are planning to do two things. One is work with a national government partner to issue a policy that says that government agencies should do this, that we all need to monitor our transport, even if even if the agency is not necessarily transport related. So we will try to work with the economic ministry, maybe the health ministry for anything related to mobility, right? But the other thing that we want to try, that we will be trying to do, is setting up a more interactive website. So just putting everything there and maybe making it open for people to use, rather than just expecting them to do it and keep track of it on their own. So I think that's something that can be done more easily now. I think over the past year, we've all somehow gotten more used to online tools. And so that's something that we will try to do as well in the Philippines. Right. Clement or Ms. Mo, if you have anything to add, you can stay on this question for a while.
No, from my side, I don't have anything to add on this question.
Okay. And then, Marie, you wanted to say something as well?
Yeah, sure. Actually, it's kind of the question of governance and institutionalization of the data gathering. It's a big topic that is coming up all the time. And in all cases, this step of institutionalizing the process, as you've said, based on agreement and policies, is a must, because of course, if it's not written, if it's not clear, if there is no date, and if you don't know which data has to be delivered to which person, then it's sure that it will not happen a lot, at least not regularly. So it's also something we have in Germany, so that there are agreements who should deliver which kind of data to which person. So that's a very first step, I would say. And it's always a big work to make it happen at the beginning when it's not existing. But as soon as it is there, then it's really saving a lot of time. So it's just to know that there will be an investment at the beginning in terms of time, also to discover who has which data. Clément was talking about that. Data are there, but you don't obviously know where. And as soon as this step is done, then it's really working much better. And then you improve, so you don't have to make the big schema at the beginning with all possible ministries, agencies, NGOs, and you can first start like on a very limited cycle and just expand slowly to other people you need, because to get everybody at one point in time in the same room is very, very complicated.
Yeah.
And a bit, yeah.
Agree. We have
Tough.
to prioritize. Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you. We do have a next question, and I think this was raised specifically as we were doing the Excel exercise. The question from Dong is, how do we verify input data?
That's a very good question. Quality check. So the first way to check data, that is a very usual one that is given by the IPCC and which is included in the tool too. It's this bottom up, top down. So bottom up means you calculate the GHG emissions as NOx showed us with the tool inputting the kilometers, the vehicles, how much they consume, and so on. And then you have what we call a bottom-up results. And there is a top-down result, which is the consumption of fuels, which means the data we have in the statistics most of the time are selling. So how much fuel is sold within 1 year, and then you compare the two results. Most of the time there is a light difference, and it's normal. No? There are two different methodics. And there is also differences in the top down, because of course one person that is getting the fuel in one country does not always drive within the country, but also in other countries. So you have per se at the beginning a little difference, but it's around like between 2%, which is absolutely great, to 10% sometimes. But if you have bigger differences, then you know obviously there is a problem in your input data. That's the first big check. And then you have a lot of little steps within the different input data that you can do. You can check, once you have all the kilometers, how many persons you have, how many households. So you can divide the kilometers per number of people, and you can compare to other countries. Or you can also divide the emissions or the consumption with the number of kilometers, so that you know, obviously my fleet of cars actually seems to consume like 10 liters of kilometers, so it seems to be correct. So that you check that at least what you inputted it is well calculated. So this little, like say, quality check on the road, and compare the results to other countries, but based on this KPI. So how much emissions per head, per person, so that you kind of have an idea. Yeah, I have kind of the same result as the neighbor or as a country I know I'm similar to. Seems correct. And of course, the last thing, which comes with the governance thing, is that you have different sources at a point in time. So it's the same. It's what we have in Germany. So we have a lot of different sources that gives us the kilometers. So there is one on the tolling system on the highways gives us some numbers, and the accounting machine that gives us other numbers. And so we kind of compare them so that we are able to minimize the errors on the road. So these are the three ways you can kind of check your data.
Thank you. So we're running short on time, but we do have a few more questions coming in. So if it's okay with everyone, we will take the questions and just continue. So our next question is from Dr. Chowdhury, and he is asking if the emissions calculator can also be applicable to tramways or railways, such as metro lines.
Sure, it is included.
Okay. So that's right there. Nothing special to tweak and not difficult to use, unlike with bike sharing.
No, it's included within the tool, the rail system. You have urban train, metro, and long distance trains that are included within the tool. And it's always possible, if necessary, you can change the names of the categories. It's something that is quite easy to do in the tool. So you can adapt to your own transportation system if you don't have a metro, but you call it in another way. If it's the urban train, you want to call it a tramway, you can just change the label in the tool, so that's no problem. So you have 3 rail categories. And if you need more, then you have to contact the MobiliseYourCity, and then we have to adapt the tool a bit to your needs and then add some categories if there are a lot more than that.
Okay, fair. And we also just sent in the chat the contact for Mobilize Your City Secretariat should you have any questions about the toolkit. So it's just contact@mobiliseyourcity.net. It's also in the chat for reference, and I think you can easily find it in the website. Okay. Another question from Prashant. Is it possible to include the CO2 emission by infrastructure deemed for MYC?
Possible, everything is possible. It's Excel based. So as soon as you have a bit of skill in Excel, it's done for that. No? Each person can expand it to its needs, knowing that then you have to do it correctly if you have correct results. So it's possible. If it's the question, if it's integrated, no. It's not an LCA tool for the moment. So there is no emissions on infrastructure. There is no emissions on the production of the vehicles, and there is no emission on recycling part. It's only energy production, so well to wheel, so which means the energy production, so fuel and electricity if you have EV vehicles, and the transportation of this fuel to the tank station, and then the emissions from the tank station to the vehicle, so which includes also loss of energies and so on, and the emissions of the vehicle itself. So it's the the well-known well-to-wheel emissions. But LCA is not included. There are a lot of ideas on development of the tool, that you could have an LCA tool that we expanded also to maritime or air, but it's still not in the reality for the moment.
Okay. So if this is something that's really of interest to your cities or to your projects, maybe let us know through Mobilize Your City Secretariat so we can see what can be done later on to, yeah, as Marie said, it's an Excel-based tool. It can be tweaked. It's just a matter of like actually doing it. Maybe it will be a lot of work, I assume. I'm not very Excel savvy, but it is possible. So it would just need time. Right. We also have a question from Qatar. How can this tool be complementary with energy-based tools?
So hi, Kata. We are working on the project together. I don't know what you're meaning by energy-based tools. On that, I'm not clear. So if you can give me some light on this aspect, would be great. At least for the moment, the tool has not been coupled to any other tool. So we're also thinking couple the tool to some well-known transportation planning tools, some as Visims, for example, to cite one of them, and there are several of them, so that you just take you have the right format, the right interface to take the data from the transportation planning tool, and you just have to click one button and it's already in the tool. That was an idea also of the future development, but it's not the case for the moment. You mean energy tools used at national levels for CO2 emissions inventory? No, not for the moment. Obviously, also with the fact that there are a lot of different tools that are used for the inventory, which means you have to adapt it to the local specificities. So of course, as I said, it's an Excel, so it can be plugged to any other tool. You just have to create the interface to your tool because of course, each country has its tool for energy and the entire sectors and transportation and industries and so on. So you would have to do it locally, I guess. There is no formula to do it for all countries.
Okay, thank you. The last question we do have on the chat right now is quite interesting. Does the tool also calculate savings in monetary terms? So any like more economic because of the emission reduction?
Unfortunately not. That's also a possible development. We have a lot of ideas. That's the really basic tools that we have launched. You could think about, of course, the price of developing the policies, so the infrastructure, building new bike lanes and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And you could also think about the social costs. So where we could also calculate the savings in terms of time spent on the road, in the traffic jams, or the advantages for health, so number of life that are saved and so on and so on. So there are a lot of possibilities to expand on the monetary aspects, which were obviously from the beginning not within the scope of the development.
Okay. And so it's really just one of those things that we either wait or ask the secretary to maybe build in or maybe just integrate it in our other calculators. Is that right, Marie?
We are
Um,
hearing the
sorry,
some
I think somebody's mic
participants.
is on. Did you want to ask a question, please? Okay.
Yeah, and I've seen one question on the pollutants, and actually
Yes.
it's a very good question too,
Mm-hmm.
because we are also talking about that. But it's all one of the nearest developments because it's something we have talked about a lot with some agencies, and it's obvious that the air pollutants thing is kind of very important for cities. It's unfortunately calculation that is much more difficult because it's not based on the amount of fuel that's consumed. It's based on a lot of different parameters, which include which type of car, so Euro level, for example. If the temperature makes a difference, the speed of the cars make a huge difference. So that all these different parameters would need to be also inputted in the tool. And we were afraid that if we start to do such a big tool, the users will be completely lost in the complexities of the data you have to input. So that's the reason why this is still in our head that we should do that at a point in time. But then we need a bit of time to see how we find a balance between the complexity of air pollutants and the easiness of the tool. Let's have to be user friendly. That's why but we know that's useful.
In that case, then, would it be simpler to have a completely separate tool for air pollutants because it looks at a lot more detail, as you were saying, the speed of the car, the fuel, all of
It's
that. Should that be different?
it's a possibility not to have a completely different tool because it would be you would have to input some things are still the same. How many cars are there? You would still need to know that. How many kilometers they drive is also important. But you have a lot more data, which would require more expertise in any case. That will not be so easy as a GHG. So either we do a module that is kind of plugging on the tool, so taking at least the data you have within the tool, or we really input it in the tool, just like another tab, or at least wouldn't be one tab, but 2 or 3 tabs at least. There are different possibilities on that, but technically it's feasible. It's a question of the complexity of the inputs.
Okay. Thank you, Marie. I think those are our questions so far. Did anybody else want to maybe raise their hand, turn on their video and their mic to ask a question live? Feel free to use the hand raise function of MS Teams if so. We will wait maybe a minute for anyone else to ask questions. But for now, maybe we ask Clement or Ms. Ngo. Is there anything else you would like to share with our participants today?
Yes, it's just not a question, but a comment. Just to say that this tool developed by IFE and used in the partnership for Mobilize Your City is very, very, very important, and especially for cities that are small cities, I would say medium-sized cities that are starting to develop a SUMP. Because it's very important to collect data, to have the data, to do the inventory, and the SUMP is the opportunity for that. So that it's a major step for those cities, and this tool, as it's very accessible, that also it's, as we say, it's free, and as Marie said, if you have Excel skills, you can, elaborate more and develop it by yourself. So this is very, very interesting. It's also very interesting not only to start a SUMP, but also to do the implementation for the SUMP and to set up an observatory for mobility in a city. So this is also like, some foundation, some basic for the cities that want to develop all that. So this is a comment. Why I'm saying that, it's because also in the region in Asia, some cities will start the SUMP, to elaborate the SUMP, their SUMP. So it's important for them to use this kind of tool. So it was my comment. But if there is other question or not, if you have any comment.
Okay. I guess there are no more questions, but I would, I guess, second that, because in the Philippines as well, we do have a NUMP, and our NUMP was developed before this calculator was, but we do hope to start working on SUMPs maybe sometime next year, and we will definitely be using this. So I think for everyone as well who's going to be using this, maybe we can email the secretariat should you have any concerns. And also, again, if you have any suggestions on what you feel is really important for your city, because we do want to make a tool that is, as Mary said, a balance of easy to use, user friendly, but also something that will capture what the cities really do need for their planning and monitoring. Okay, so I think that's it for our Q&A, and I will turn over to Clement for...
Okay, but just first of all, I would say thank you very much to all of you, the speakers and also the participants. One thing that I want to add, if you want to join us on the LinkedIn group for the community of practice, Mobilize Your City Asia, please do not hesitate. Patricia will share the link in the discussion box. So we will continue this discussion, but also other discussion on the LinkedIn group. That for sure for the months that are coming. Of course, I would like to say thank you for the IFE and Marie to participate this morning, early this morning, for you as you are based in Germany. Don't forget, I share again my screen. This one, I hope you see it, because we just start the day of the Mobilize Your City Global Forum. We just start with this session on the calculation emission calculator. I think the next session is in 45 minutes. So it will start in Europe with also the colleagues from Europe, from Africa, and it will go all around the day. So just join the Global Forum for today. And thank you very much for participating today to this first webinar of the day for the Global Forum. So thank you very much, all of you. We can stop here.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Bye bye.